I have known Lisa Steward since she began her ABA program in Kokomo, Indiana. And I've had the honor of being on her advisory board for the ABA Center. I have to tell you that she does amazing work in the state of Indiana and is probably one of the most ethical and well-rounded providers in our state. And so I'm really honored to have Lisa speaking for us about implementing ABA in the home.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pratt. And we are equally, if not more, excited about having you on board and having you along my side, me especially, as I was able to get a center launched and work through the first of the most stressful years. So again, I believe we're doing great work, and I know that you're a part of that. So thank you. All right, so the part of the technical issues would be my computer. So I'm going to rely on Dr. Pratt to advance my slides as we go through. So a little bit about some of my experience, though. I have provided ABA in the clinic setting primarily for the last 10 years, but I have done a lot of work in home through consultation and in schools as well. So we have worked in a variety of areas, and I'm most excited about being able to share some ideas on how to implement ABA in the home and carry over some of the things that we do every day in a little less structured manner, but in a home setting where, again, it's most important. The progress that kids make in the center is great, but it really means very little unless you're seeing it in the homes. And I know a lot of families aren't able to access ABA or don't have access to intensive ABA services. So hopefully this will give you some direction and ideas when working with your kids. So, okay, so what I'm gonna go over tonight, I'm gonna give you a little overview of ABA, how it might relate to those of you attending this webinar. We'll talk about assessment and what that might look like in the home, goal development, reward selection, which is going to be a very important part of implementing anything in the home, is making sure we know how to reward the progress that's being made. We'll talk about some proactive strategies that might be effective across the board. We'll talk about interventions that can help specific or teach specific skills. And then we'll talk a little bit about evaluation and how you can do that in the home with your child. So, all right. Kathy, we need a cue or something. Touch my nose when it's time for the next slide. All right, so applied behavior analysis. What is ABA? Again, I could sit down and talk for hours about applied behavior analysis, but it would probably bore a lot of you. What matters most likely to this audience is what it means to a family. And it really is the application of principles of learning to achieve meaningful outcomes. So the application of principles of learning could mean any number of things. So ABA isn't synonymous with discrete trial teaching or chaining and shaping. It really encompasses, a number of different principles of learning. So, yeah. So again, if you have a preconceived notion of what applied behavior analysis is, you might just set that aside and recognize that it explains the how and why that behavior changes. Okay, so at the center, back up, at the center of applied behavior analysis is, can you go back one slide? Is motivation and reinforcement. So anytime we want to make a change or see a skill increase or a behavior decrease, the child or individual has to have motivation to make those changes. So to learn something new or to decrease a behavior, they have to be motivated to do so. So again, that is going to be something we spend quite a bit of time on because it is so important to what we're doing, especially if you're looking at ABA in the home environment, any environment, motivation is key. We'll look at assessment, we'll look at measurable goals and what that might look like in the home. So it's not too technical, but it still makes sense and can be measurable for mom and dad. We'll talk about evidence-based intervention. That's something that ABA really does require, is any of the teaching strategies that we use must be evidence-based Again, so that hopefully will create some confidence around the work that's being done as ABA. And then we'll also talk about data-driven decision-making. And what that means is that anything that we are working on, we need to be keeping note of, even in the home, making sure you recognize if the strategies that you're using are effective, so that you know that you're on the right page, and if and when something needs to change a little. Okay, Kathy. All right, so assessment. Again, if you think assessment in ABA in a clinical setting, you're going to have numerous very formal assessments, and it'll be quite a procedure. And at home, what I really would want you to do is think about just really assessing your overall concerns. If you're here, there's most likely something that you want to change. That might mean you want to teach a child a new skill, or that there's a behavioral concern that really needs to be assessed and looked at and shifted. So looking at the things that are most concerning to you or your child really can be part of that assessment process. So I gave you some general examples. You guys may be able to relate to these, or you may have some other things that you can somehow tie or somewhat tie into these. So an example might be, we're teaching Jonah to brush his teeth. He's just a child who doesn't brush his teeth a lot. So that's my overall goal. I really want to increase that. We all know dental bills are expensive. So getting, it's important. And Jonah may have trouble going to medical offices or appointments, which might be a whole nother issue. But either way, for Jonah, we're going to work on brushing teeth. Sarah spends a whole lot of time on a screen, which I am assuming many people can relate to that as well. But for her, we simply want to decrease screen time. Rhodes, he's a little one who isn't communicating much right now. So we are going to work on, maybe our primary goal there is to increase communication for him. And Eliana, we just see a lot of tantrums for Eliana. So maybe that's a priority and something we want to work on. Okay, so we've completed our assessment. We have some idea of some skills we want to teach and increase, and some behaviors that we want to decrease. Okay, Kathy. Okay, so setting goals. Again, thinking a little less formal than what you might see in a school or in an ABA clinic, but we have to set goals for ourselves, even in the home. We all know that if we don't, it really makes it easier to let things slide. A lot of us set goals for ourselves when we're changing our own behavior. An example might be, I'm going on vacation in July. I need to lose 5 pounds by July 10th. So having that goal in mind is going to help us get where we need to get and keep us focused. So we'll want to do that for our kids as well. So you want to think about the goals that and the smaller targets within those goals that you want to develop, make those measurable. You want to start small, make the first goal or target easy to accomplish. Okay, so we'll talk through some examples then of goals that we can develop for kids. All right. Okay, so for Jonah and brushing his teeth, so it might be that I really think that by the end of the year, I would like to see him completely independent with teeth brushing or brushing his teeth. So that's our overarching goal. And so where I'm going to start with him is I'm going to have him complete the first step of toothbrushing by July 14th. So I'm going to give myself a month to work through the first goal, and we'll map out those goals a little later on when I show you how to work on daily living skills. Okay. The next one, so Sarah, and reducing screen time. Again, we know by the time she goes back to school in August, the teachers out there may know my dates are off, but I know sometime in August, most of the schools are going or will be returning. So for her, we want to get her down to no more than one, not hours, but hour per day. That's the overall goal. And I'm going to start with simply shaving off 15 minutes by the end of this month. So that might be my initial step, is simply I'm going to shave off 15 minutes a day by the end of the month. So I have now my overarching goal and a relatively simple target to get started. Okay. All right, little Rhodes, who really isn't talking much at all. What I would love to see by the end of the year is I want to see him answering some questions as simple, what do you want? Maybe even what's your name, but really most importantly, I want to see him asking for the things that he wants. So big goal by the end of the year, but I'm going to start with simply getting a response, a verbal response or vocal response a few times a day by the end of this month. And it may not have to be the actual word or perfect articulation, but an approximation at least 5 times a day. And we'll talk about how to increase vocalizations from Rhodes in a little bit later, okay? And then Eliana and those tantrums, again, we see there's a lot of folks that come to us for support with behavior, and that certainly makes sense. So with this particular concern, I would have you reference the talk that Kathy did on the functions of behavior and targeting challenging behavior, because that would be a nice place to start and it'll help you delve into addressing tantrum behavior. But for her, I'm going to say we watched that webinar and we now know how to determine that the tantrum really is caused because she wants access, or she wants a particular item, toy, or activity that she can't have. Okay, so for her goal, I'm simply going to have her wait to gain access to that favorite toy or activity for at least 5 minutes by the time she starts school in August. I'm going to hope that she can wait for at least 5 minutes while a peer is finishing up playing with a toy in her classroom. And then we should be good. My first step, though, it might be that we simply are going to ask her to wait for 5 seconds, because this is a harder skill for her. So that target that's going to be very attainable is going to be a 5-second goal. You simply wait. You know she wants the iPad. You wait 5 seconds, and then off we go, and she can get that. And we just want her to do that 3 times by the end of the month. Okay. All right, so we have some goals mapped out, we have our targets. Next thing we need to think about is how difficult those targets or tasks might be for our kiddos. So what we do, we'll think about Jonah, for instance, and brushing teeth. For him, that is a really hard skill. He doesn't know all the steps. It's just always a battle, so we know it's really hard for him. Sarah and screen time, again, Sarah will do some other things, but she really prefers the iPad, so we know that that's a moderately difficult task. Rhodes, again, communication isn't something that we see much at all from him right now, so we know it's going to be very difficult, or we want to prepare for that and expect that to be a little, quite challenging for him. And then Eliana, waiting to receive that favorite toy, we know it's going to be really hard, because when she wants something, she wants it. Okay, so we have an idea of how tough these skills might be. So then we need to be thinking about the rewards. So again, when we first talked about ABA, motivation and reinforcement, it's so important to make sure that we are motivating kids to work on the things that we're going to be working on, and to select the right rewards for the achievements that they make. So when you think about rewards, it's easy to think that, M&Ms work for everything, or stickers, or high fives, any number of things that our classroom teachers may have used, or even our parents growing up. But for children with autism, it's really common for them to have very selective or limited interests. So we want to make sure we know exactly what they want to work for, and determine what the most valuable activities or items are in their world, so that we can pull those in and use them as we're teaching new skills. So you need to be thinking maybe activities. What activities do the kids really like? And with that, you'll also want to be recognizing there might be limited access to some of those. So we'll plug that in accordingly. Items, do they have a favorite toy? Is there an iPad, a favorite book? Money, with that, really those generalized reinforcers, as we would call them in ABA, but things that aren't necessarily, that the $10 bill isn't nearly as valuable as the toy that it buys at Target. But if your child recognizes that $10 bill will lead to that toy, then maybe money will work for them, or quarters, pennies, probably not, but money in some fashion may work. Edibles is one of the easiest and quickest reinforcers for especially really early learners, because you don't have to take it back. If you give them a chip or a part of a chip, then you don't have to fight them in getting that back. They chomp on it and off you go. You're ready for the next opportunity. I'm not a big proponent of giving children a lot of candy and chocolate and edibles if you don't have to. So use that sparingly. If you're working on something though that's real important and want to ramp up motivation, edibles can be a nice selection. And then we, on occasion, especially if we're talking about maybe older children, social activities, maybe even younger children, but there may be some social rewards that might be effective. And that might be, maybe you get to call grandma when you accomplish X, Y, and Z, or making a special phone call or FaceTiming, whatever it might be. There might be some social rewards that can come into play. So really think about your child, have an idea of what activities, what things really make the most sense for them and can be used when you're teaching new skills or changing behavior. Okay. All right. So again, thinking about rewards, that first bullet there. So the size of the rewards should match the effort needed to accomplish the goal. Again, we've talked a little bit about that, but it's just important enough that I stuck it in there again. All right. So in looking at the kids that we've been talking about, Jonah and brushing his teeth, we know it's very hard. We also know we've determined through our assessments of rewards that he really likes YouTube. So therefore, we will give him access, or we'll give him the iPad and let him watch some YouTube as soon as he finishes brushing his teeth, or the step to brushing teeth that he's on at any given point. What you might think about with Jonah would be maybe limiting the iPad use outside of toothbrushing, and that might be a real challenge, but maybe you present his very favorite application only after brushing teeth. So again, really making sure that iPad is always very motivating and sought after, and that will keep his motivation ramped up pretty high. All right, so with Sarah, we're trying to reduce that screen time. What we determined with Sarah is that she really enjoys playing board games with her father. So we're going to try to rope that in and have him sign up for playing a board game with Sarah at the end of the evening when we determine that she's met her goal. So you might have a backup plan there because dad may not always be available, but that would be what Sarah selected, or what made the most sense for her. All right, for little roads, we're going to talk about how we're working on teaching communication and how that in itself acts as motivation and reward. So with him, that's going to be built in. And then with Eliana, waiting those 5 seconds before receiving a favorite toy, what we'll do, obviously that favorite toy is going to be rewarding, but the waiting is going to be new. It's not something she's had to do it before. So we're going to plug in a gummy, which we determined was her favorite food. So after waiting 5 seconds, that initial target, once it's met, she'll get a gummy and access to her favorite toy. So we've we're, like I said, we're mapping out rewards and how much of it and what that might look like to be effective for the goals that we are discussing. Okay. All right. So then some general proactive strategies or things to think about that really will help, and I've found to be very helpful in the time that I've been working with kids and families. We all know that parents and we all get frustrated. It doesn't matter who your child is, whether they're on the spectrum or not. There are going to be times when you just get really frustrated and it's been a long day and whatnot, but it'll be great if you can really try to pump the brakes a little bit, recognize how important it is to always take a positive approach, make those positive statements when you're interacting with your child, especially when you're working on something new. So instead of pointing out maybe what they did wrong or shouldn't be doing, let's instead talk about and remind them of the things that they did well, or what that replacement behavior or what they could have done instead. But again, I for every time I've seen it, I wish I had $1 for it. If you tell your child, no, don't get on the table, especially kids with autism, it's get on the table. That's what I heard, and that's what I'm going for. And the attention that we get when we're upset may be something that really functions to reward the behavior. It's hard to tell sometimes if that's the case. So let's just avoid those, the what not to do's. Okay. All right, Kathy. All right. Another proactive strategy, again, this works, across the board with kids and maybe young adults. Doesn't have to be a picture schedule necessarily, but a lot of times pictures are helpful. And with all of us, even those of us who can read, sometimes it's nice to have some pictures included in your daily schedule. But with this, one of the things I found this on Etsy, I don't know the maker there. I know it's included in that picture, but I found this little system. They send you a PDF. You can, if you have a printer, you can print it out. You have, the tools you need to get started on a picture schedule for $5 or $6. So I thought that was pretty fantastic. I actually purchased it this afternoon. So, nonetheless, technology has made it easy for us to use pictures and develop these things, in the last several years. So picture schedules, when you're using them, again, you might think about when you're plugging in the activities that are hard. So in this example, if you see brush teeth, that's right after go potty. So if brushing teeth is going to be hard, if this were Jonah's, we would make sure that something really fun comes after the difficult task of brushing teeth. And in this case, it would be breakfast, which I assume most children like. So if you're using activity schedules, again, make sure you kind of intersperse the difficult tasks with the easier tasks. But again, it really might help even us sometimes plan as a parent if we're thinking about, keeping a child moving during the day, keeping them engaged and giving them the right information. Activity schedules would be a good option. Okay, another thing might be between the activities in those activity schedules, giving the child a 1-minute reminder or warning. So if we're watching TV and the next activity might be doing homework, making sure we're giving them a little bit of a heads up or a warning. Hey, you got 1 more minute and then we're going to work on some homework. Okay. First, then boards. So if you have a child who may not, or just a life that doesn't allow you to map out a whole day, which again, probably a good portion of us would struggle to know exactly what a day is going to look like and use a full day, especially on the weekends. A first then board is a good option. So that's really somewhat of a condensed version of the activity schedule. It's very effective when you know you have a difficult task or something that's harder, because you can say, first, we're going to do homework. First, we're going to work on brushing teeth, and then we're going to have the iPad or do something really fun. So it can present the day or expectations in those short little snippets, making sure that the difficult task is followed by something of their choice or a reward that we've determined is going to be effective. And then offering choices within the activity. Again, I would try to stay focused on the important piece, and that might be the toothbrush and getting those teeth brushed. What doesn't matter is maybe where the child brushes their teeth, if it's your sink or his sink, if he's using, a new toothbrush, one of the Bluetooth, allow choices within some of the tasks that they're working on, and you might find that is helpful. My little one, when there are nights she doesn't want to brush her teeth, so we have found that what helps motivate her is selecting a new or a different way to get to the bathroom. So sometimes we fly like an airplane, sometimes we march like ants. But so given some choices and having some fun around those more difficult activities or the things that aren't so enjoyable can work. Okay, and then another option might be having another family member or a friend or a parent complete the activity with them. So here you see a picture of what might be siblings brushing their teeth together. So anything that we're teaching, if one of our buddies or our siblings are doing it along with us, sometimes that helps motivate us. Okay. All right, intervention. I just wanted to forewarn you, here we go. Here comes the good stuff. Okay. Okay, so teaching daily living skills. With this, what we're going to work with and implement is called a task analysis. With task analysis, we're using probably a lot of technical terms to some of you. It really is simply a list of steps that are included in any activity or skill that we're trying to teach. Okay, so if you're teaching something like brushing teeth or putting on your clothes or making a sandwich, you can do the same. You'll do that just like we are here. You'll think of every little step that is included in that activity, that task, and you'll make note of it. Okay, what we might do then, so if you read through this, I have 10 steps mapped out for toothbrushing. If we advance a slide here, I will show you what we did is we developed some pictures to go along with those different steps. I actually kind of jumped into the step of putting toothpaste on the brush because Jonah has the rest of those. Obviously, Jonah is fictitious, even though I make it sound like I know this child, but nonetheless, we know Jonah is on the step where he's putting toothpaste on the brush. And then what we need to do is teach the rest of the skills up through putting away the toothbrush and toothpaste. So what we're going to do with this task analysis is we're going to teach this in a way that's called backward chaining. That way he's going to be very successful. The first 9 steps, the ones in white, we are going to do for him or with him. So we're going to make it really easy up through that last step, the 10th step, which is putting away his toothbrush and toothpaste. Once he does that, that's where if and when he does that, he gets his reward after that step. So again, backward chaining means we're teaching the child to do the last step, and we're moving through that in more of a backward fashion. So, all right, next slide. So from there, let's say for 3 days, Jonah was able to put his toothbrush away and toothpaste. He got his rewards every time. Now we're ready to back up one more step and start working on the rinsing brush, rinsing his brush. So again, we're going to either do the first 8 steps for him or with him. So it's very easy. Then we're going to hand it off to him and let him rinse his brush, put away his toothbrush and toothpaste, and then he gets the reward. So you can see where this is going. All right, the next slide. All right. Yeah, I promise I won't go through all 10 the same way. This is the last one we'll talk about because you get the gist. So first 7 steps we're doing with him or for him. On that 8th step where he is spitting out toothpaste, that's where he picks up. He's going to spit out the toothpaste, rinse his brush, put away his toothbrush and toothpaste, and then he gets his reward. So that is how backward chaining works with task analysis. And we do it every day with children at the center, and it works beautifully. So again, it'll take a little bit of work at home, but use those visuals, make it fun, get little brother or sister involved, march to the bathroom, whatever you might need to do to keep the motivation up, but use these task analysis to teach new skills. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the outcome. Okay, all right, next slide. All right, so teaching communication. So when you have a little one who isn't talking at all or isn't communicating, I think that's probably what we see most often in our early learning program is, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds coming in who have very limited communication. So there are some nice strategies that we can use at home to help kids in this process of communicating. And when you think of a child with autism, what we really want to do is recognize the difficulty of communication and make it as simple and rewarding as possible. So if we're hearing some babbling, you're hearing some sounds, but you're really just not seeing it in context when they're requesting things or with a communication partner, we can really, that's at a point when we can probably, start working on increasing communication a little bit more effectively. So what we might do is think of one simple word for the things that your child loves most in life. So for example, if your child's playing with a train, or maybe they're reaching for a train, most parents are going to know exactly what your child wants. And it's so easy to just hand it off, right? But instead, we might withhold that train for just a few seconds and maybe model the word. So train, say train. If you're getting an approximation at all, then they're instantly getting that train. So, really taking every opportunity and not just being that parent who knows and loves their child so much, you just want to make it simple and give them all the things that they want and need, but try to get some words when they really want something. That motivation's there, they're going to work very hard to get it. That's the time to try to grab a sound or a word approximation. One thing that that I didn't mention, and I should have, the first sentence or bullet point talks about modeling and teaching language all the time. That it's very important to, within your environment, particularly when a child is engaged in something and seems really interested in something, model in words around that. So it might be, oh, it's a car, it's a red car, the car is driving, the car is stopping. So really start to use words and make it simple, but use the words to label and narrate the things that you're doing or they're doing throughout the day. All those things are, again, will start being effective and will be very helpful as your kids are starting to communicate. Yeah, okay, Kathy. All right. So along the same lines, again, we've talked about focusing on simple words that lead to immediate reward. And I can repeat that 5 times to make sure it sticks. Only get those simple words that directly relate to the preferred item. So that's where we're talking about the reward being built in. If your child's really interested in a ball, then that's what we're working on. We don't want them saying, or using and having to form sounds if it's not real meaningful to them. But if they're asking for something and getting something that they really like, the words will start coming. So manners, again, all of us really want our children to be well mannered and to say the please and thank yous. And I certainly understand that, but I will tell you, in the beginning, when kids with autism are first starting to talk, it's important to set that aside and start to get those words through direct reinforcement, meaning a please and a thank you really might not mean a whole lot to our kids. It may not get them anything, but maybe a smile or a hug from mom and dad, and that may not do it for them, right? So if you can bring yourself to, if you can be okay with that, set the please and thank yous and the manners aside while we're really increasing some of the basic communication and having a child ask for the exact item that they want. So a couple other examples were, if you open a pack of gummies, you might get maybe 20 gummies in a pack. That gives you 20 opportunities to get the word gummy or an approximation of that. So lots of opportunities. Like you don't realize how many opportunities there really are to teach kids to talk and communicate until you step back and really take a look at that. If a child loves to be picked up, and most children I know do, whether it is, picking up, flying around, just being any type of physical activity is always fun, tickles, things like that. So that's a nice time to get those words as well. And up, again, typically kids can give you some approximation of the word up or go, or, anything that you can think of that might be simple enough to replicate or echo. Use those words when, they're really motivated. And then rewarding all attempts with those early talkers, anytime they make an effort to communicate or use a word in context, definitely make sure they get all kinds of whatever it is they're asking for, and lots of praise and tickles and whatever else they might like. So, okay, Kathy. All right, so moving along to maybe some kids who are a little bit more advanced, they have the communication, have some of those basic words and can communicate, again, some of those basic wants and needs. What we might start to look at is what's called functional communication. And really, if the primary goal that you had in mind revolved around change in behavior or problematic behavior, then functional communication is going to be very helpful and something that you'll really want to think about using. And what it does is it replaces, let's say a behavior is occurring, again, to get access to something we really want or to get your attention. What functional communication teaches a child to do is use those words, say, hey, I really want that iPad. Can I have 5 more minutes with my iPad? When can I have my iPad? Or, hey, mom, can you come talk to me, if they're trying to get your attention? Or can I ask you one more question? So giving them replacement phrases that function as the behavior, the problematic behavior might function. Okay, you can go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Okay, so these are just examples. So this one is the behavior that is occurring is that a child curses every time you turn off the gaming system. we can probably recognize that the function is that they want to play with the game longer, right? So I'm going to give them words to use instead of cursing at me. And that might be, asking for 5 more minutes, or, hey, can I finish this level and then be done? And when they do ask more appropriately for those 5 minutes, or ask to finish a level, then I would strongly suggest letting them, because it's much better than having the curse words fly, and it's moving in the right direction. So that is a form of functional communication, how you can use it when a child really gets upset because they want something. Okay. Attention, again, so your child pulls on you or requests your attention repeatedly when you're talking to someone else. And we all know that that happens a lot with most kids. So again, wanting your attention is the reason it's happening. So what we might do is have a child ask, hey, mom, one more question. I have one more question. I want to tell you something. Okay, fine, fantastic. Give me that question. What's going to be tough is we all know that there's going to be a second, third, fourth question come at that point. But we still what we'll want to do, answer that one question, and then maybe give them some suggestions on what to do until you're available, and give them as much information as your child can manage, so that they know what to expect. That's when a first then board, if you have it handy, might come up. First you might go play a game with your friend, and then mom will talk to you. So building in some strategies when they're having to wait on your attention will be important. And I think, as I note there at the bottom, a waiting program in general was going to be really helpful for a child who really struggles when the attention isn't on them at all times. So, okay. All right, and then escape or avoidance. Let's say your child drops to the floor when they're asked to brush their teeth. So we know that the behavior is occurring because they just don't want to do something I've asked them to. So functional communication might come into play here, and right when you say, all right, it's time to brush your teeth, you can quickly prompt them to ask, okay, ask for 5 more minutes, or say, can I have 2 more minutes, or play a little bit longer. So give them the words to ask for that avoidance, essentially, or prolong that activity. Now, obviously, there still has to be a stopping point, and we're going to have to work through that. But you're giving your children the tools to delay just a little bit longer, or avoid something that's unpleasant without having to drop to the floor or demonstrate a behavior. Now, with something like this, you'll always want to be thinking about rewarding, making sure that we're rewarding the good behavior. Like I said, we're giving them the 5 minutes. If there may be some additional rewards that you want to come into play, because it can be hard for kids to eventually have to go do those tough things. So maybe on the back end of that. So for this, if this is Jonah, then we know once he finishes brushing his teeth, then he gets another reward of some sort, some iPad time simply for brushing teeth. So think about ways that not just to have your children use communication more functionally, but also how do we reward the really tough things and the progress they're making as they're working through this and learning to use their words better. Okay, Kathy. All right, evaluating progress. So with this, what we want to do, like I said, with ABA, you really have to make sure that you're collecting some data, getting some information around the progress that's being made for us to know if what we're doing is effective or if it needs to be changed. So just some visuals of ideas, a binder, I've met some of the most organized folks come through the door with kids. I've also met some folks who might struggle a little bit to find a paper that was handed to them in the morning. So figure out what works best for you when it comes to a system of just monitoring progress for your kids. Again, a binder is always a favorite one. I know with technology now, there's phone apps and things like that you can make notes on and track behavior and any number of things. But for me, I would grab a binder, I would note my goals, and then probably put some sheets in there. I created one, the one on the bottom right there is just a Excel sheet that notes what my goal is, what target we're working on, and then I'm probably going to pencil write in or hand write in the dates, whether or not the child completed that step. So I can kind of keep a running total and have some really helpful information about where they're at and how they're moving through that. It looks a little more formal, but it can be very effective. Yeah. And then the other things with the top left with Hunter, with that little, yes, the reward sheet for Hunter. I've seen these be very effective in homes where, if your kid's really into dinosaurs, and I feel like most are right now, having a little tracking sheet where, once they fill up their little sheet, maybe they do get an ice cream sundae or whatever may be really rewarding for them. So that's just giving you an idea of how to get yourself organized, how to make it fun and visual for your child, and then how to make sure that you are reviewing just the progress that the kids are making, so that you can determine if you've been working on brush and teeth for 3 weeks, that first step, we're just not getting anywhere, then we probably need to back something down or rework the program. And I assume if you guys have other professionals working with your children, you're not afraid to reach out and ask for help. I know you have the IRCA in this group here that has a lot of resources available. So take advantage of that if you are feeling like you're getting stuck or you're overwhelmed or you just can't get past that first week of implementing some ABA in the home. So, all right, the next slide, you already saw it. It was just me thanking you.